Brand culture is an intrinsic part of every organization. Quite often, when a company has a great brand culture, it usually means that they also have a great market success. And having an excellent brand culture is a key element of any branding effort. A great brand culture and culture transformation within a company is not an overnight process. It requires leadership, time, change of belief, and certain skills. In this new episode of Talking with Branders, we're going to be exploring the concept of culture transformation and how important is this for your brand. Welcome to Talking with Branders. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us to this new episode of Talking with Branders, a new way to learn about branding from the best branders of the globe. If you want to learn more about branding, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and follow us on our social media where you can find us as Branders Magazine. We are in Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. In this new episode of Talking with Branders, we have the honor of talking with one of the world's 100 most influential people according to Time Magazine. Author of 7 New York Times best-selling books, brand and culture transformation expert, founder of Lindstrom Company, the one and only Martin Lindstrom. Hello, Martin. How are you?
I'm good. Sorry about being so late. You had so many passwords I had to type in, and they're all wrong.
Sorry, no, it's okay. It's okay. I was waiting here. And well, it's a big honor to be here talking with you.
You're very kind. Thank you. How are you doing?
Good, good. How are you?
I'm excellent. Where in the world are you?
I'm in Oklahoma, in Norman, Oklahoma.
Yeah, fantastic. Yes. Okay, that's good.
What about you?
Well, I'm born in Denmark, but I live in Switzerland and in Australia.
Okay.
So right now I'm in Switzerland.
Nice.
And you know how it is with Swiss people. Everything is controlled.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know. That's good. That's very good.
Yeah, so I feel fairly safe at the moment. You never know, but so far I feel so good, right? Yeah. Fantastic. Well, good to meet you. Tell me more about yourself.
Well, I'm from Colombia.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of you since I was in Colombia. I think I don't remember exactly the year when you were there, but I know you went to Colombia like 2 or 3 times to Expo Marketing.
Yeah, but I've been to Colombia many times. I've probably been to Medellin and Bogota at least 50 times, I think.
Oh my God, a lot.
Yeah,
no, I just remember the time.
No, but that was for clients and governments and stuff like that. But yeah, I love Colombia. I tend to say that Colombia is the biggest misunderstanding on planet Earth. Everyone think it's this horrible place. In reality, is this unpolished, amazing garment, right?
Yeah, and television doesn't help. So.
No, and the movies doesn't help either, right? Yeah. Okay, so you're from Colombia, and then you moved to the US, or what?
Yes, I started with Branders Magazine like 6 years ago in Colombia.
Okay. Yeah.
But I started with Branders in Spanish. But after the second or the third issue, I realized that doing the magazine in English would be better because I can reach more people around the world with this topic about branding. And well, here I am.
You are. Well done. Good work. Okay, fantastic. Well, sounds good. So, you can ask any questions you want, of course, and you can be very detailed or whatever. So there's no limitations for what you can ask, and I'll do my best to be short and concise and relevant as well, right?
Well, I always like to start with this question. What is branding? So what is branding for Martin Lindstrom?
Well, branding for me is really to infuse emotions on top of a product or a service or an experience. And the stronger you connect with that thing, whatever it is, on an emotional level, the stronger degree of loyalty you create, the more you're likely to buy it, the more you're likely to recommend it to other people. And that's really the concept of branding. Remember, branding is only going on in our mind. The products are only happening in the factory, and that's really the main difference.
That's true, and that's very important for for people to understand how connection works with how connection is a key element for branding, right?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Well, uh, we know that brand culture is a key element of any branding effort, right? And sometimes brands need like to transform or to change this culture, but sometimes people or companies doesn't know what culture transformation is. So what is exactly culture transformation, and how important is for companies leaders to understand it?
I think it's increasingly important to understand that a culture in a company is really the truth. If you sell a product or service, and let's say the image to the world is amazing, people absolutely love it, but as soon as you jump on the phone and you talk to the person in the call center, the person is arrogant or rude, or you go into the store and the person's not there, is not service minded, or is not following up when you send an email, you will start to see the truth of that brand. And that truth is really a broken culture. So what's really important is that you align the brand image and what it stands for with the culture it has. Because in the end of the day, if you're a very large organization and you have thousands or hundreds of thousands of staff, and the more they live the brand, are proud of the brand, and you really feel, wow, these guys love working there, the more they become, in the end of the day, ambassadors for the brand. And that means it really has a holistic 360 view to the world. Culture is also important, in particular now during COVID-19, because I think a lot of people have been locked in behind
Mm-hmm.
their screens. And it's super difficult, of course, to build a culture when you're sitting in your own little home, now trying to create a sense of belonging with your thousands of colleagues somewhere in another home, right? But what you will see happening now is that those companies which had a very strong culture, they actually are even stronger now because they stand together. Those companies who have a poor culture, they are weaker now. And so you could almost say that COVID-19 has amplified the best and the worst in every company. And I think a lot of companies now would realize if they don't get their house in order, hopefully once businesses are slightly different and the reality is more positive, then they really have a problem.
Yeah, so these times are, like you say, very important to identify if your culture is strong or not, right?
Oh,
Um,
it's super important because I can tell you, if whenever we go into organization and we transform a company around what the consumer has taught us, and of course we build a brand, that if we do not manage to get the culture, the people with us, then what happens is that the whole thing collapses as soon as we leave the organization. And I've seen it. I tried it. I tried it multiple times where we came up, I think, in partnership with the client with amazing ideas which really would transform the entire industry. Yet, and they all thought it was great. As soon as we left, there was so much politics and bureaucracy and compliance, all of it immediately killing these great ideas and ending up with things like a shadow on its own. And what happened is that people get even more demotivated, and even worse, what the company is offering, it becomes even more irrelevant, because what happens is that it's more and more disconnected from reality because people are more busy doing all their politics internally in their company rather than actually pleasing and making customers become happy. And that is, I think a lot of old companies are struggling with this big way now because they're just afraid of change, and because of that they protect everything they have so much that they actually die.
yeah, and well, with all this that you are saying, it's very related with one of the concept of Philip Kotler in one of their books, that they always say that you need to first think in your internal customer, right? If
Yeah,
you think in your internal customer, they are going to show to others what your brand is, what your company is, right?
absolutely. No, no, Philip and I have talked a lot about it over the years, and I fundamentally believe that um, the strength you have, remember this, the strength you have as a company when you're founded is that the founder typically had a problem. He or she saw an issue in the field and came up with a solution. And that solution suddenly became the foundation for this entire company being built. What happens is that over the years, as the company grows bigger and bigger, the distance between the founder and what's going on is getting bigger and bigger. And slowly the whole company is drifting away from what the true consumer needs were. And even worse, because the world is changing so fast right now, the company kind of believes that the world is still the same, whereas actually consumers, because of the net, because of social media, because of COVID, because of Black Lives Matter, all these issues are suddenly going in a completely different direction. And that means that this company is acting as a cocoon. So you really need to see your customers as the internal audience, first of all. Once you get them on board, there's a pretty big chance that they will be much more passionate when they pick up the phone or write copy or is acting online. Versus, I've worked for some horrible companies. I mean, companies, some of the biggest in the world, and I'm thinking about in particular one company now, which had such a horrible culture that people literally would go to the bathrooms and throw up because they're under so much pressure. They so much felt scared and frightened about the decisions they made. I don't need to tell you, how motivated do you think they are for creating great stuff? Not really. It's all about protecting myself to survive, right?
Yeah, of course. Well, that's very, very interesting. Well, what do you think are the key elements to transforming a brand culture, and how can a brand evolve to steer new customer behaviors?
The first thing you have to do is to create a sense of belonging. And I think the most important thing is to almost infuse a sense of religion into our company. Now, I wrote a book in 2008 called Biology, Biology. And in the book, we did this neuroscience study where we scanned people's brains, in particular people which belong to the faith of Christianity. And what we learned was there was a strong parallels between really powerful brands and really strong religions. And as we broke it down, I traveled around the world, interviewed religious leaders across the world. I learned that there were certain aspects which they all had in common: creating a sense of belonging, having a clear enemy, very good at storytelling, having a sense of mystery, appealing to the five senses, having a powerful storyline in general. There's a lot of different aspects they all had in common between religion and brands. And in reality, what I just mentioned for you is also the key ingredients is to create a powerful culture. The first thing you have to do is to create a sense of belonging. That is that you have a very strong and clear purpose. And if you feel the purpose is only to earn money and you feel that's the answer, it's wrong. I always think fundamentally that the purpose should be to have a much higher degree of vision for where you want to go. Now, I spoke to a guy the other days, the CEO of the largest seatbelt manufacturer in the world. His name is Jan Carlson, and it's a Swedish company. And one of the things he said was that they were not measured based on how many money they earned. They were measured on how many lives they saved. And I think that's really thought-provoking, because I think if you as an organization are measuring how much you sell stuff, quite often stuff which are not necessarily good for people that are getting more fat or unhealthy or drunk or whatever it is, then I don't think you can motivate people internally. But if you can create a really powerful purpose, I think you're on the right path. The second thing is then to give people a mandate. And if you give people a mandate internally in the organization, you will notice that they won't take it. I mean, in theory, if you go to textbooks in schools, they'll tell you give everyone a mandate. The reality is people won't take it because they're afraid of giving the mandate, or they're afraid of the mandate they receive. It's not true. They think someone is lying. So they'll go back to what we call the default behavior. So one of the things you have to do is to train people to take a mandate. And you do that by creating initiatives. We call them 90-day interventions. And 90-day interventions is really small projects which are throwing everything up in the air. And out of that, you create a whole new way of seeing the world, typically connected with the consumer mind. And then after 90 days, you celebrate the success out of it. And that's really a point number 3. First one is to have a strong purpose. Second one is to have a 90-day intervention. And the third one is to celebrate the success internally. So it almost cements, or it sits in stone, that it's okay to be different. Because if you don't celebrate it, it just feels loud. People say, "Oh, was that a success? What he did over there? Probably wasn't. So I'll go back to what's safe." But if you celebrate it and everyone say, "Wow, he's amazing. What he did was amazing," everyone will say, "I want to be like this guy," and it really changes the culture. And once you do that, you will see it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Now, of course, there's a lot of other things creating cultures, but I've given you sort of a very quick pathway, which I think a lot of companies are failing, either because they don't have a strong purpose or what they're saying is bullshit, to be frank. Or point number two, they have these 2-year plans, and no one has the patience to work for 2 years on something. You just lose the energy and the passion. And number three, very few people are celebrating the success, and because of that, you go straight back to the default mindset.
That's nice. So when you were saying we can, well, what I can identify is that for a culture transformation is very important leadership, right? Leadership is like in the top, or maybe could be in the top. What do you think? Because
Absolutely.
people used
Absolutely.
to follow a good leader, right?
Well, absolutely, it's in top. I mean, I don't need to say more than in the United States, you have a president right now which do not want to wear a mask. But we know today from all sorts of scientists, and we know from where I am in Europe, that if you wear a mask, I know it's painful, I know it's not standard, I know it's horrible, I know all these things, but if you wear a mask, it's not spreading as fast. So how on earth can you ask 350 million people, let's say, to wear a mask when the leader is not doing it? You can't.
Yeah.
So you are showing leadership by walking the walk. You can't just talk the talk. And I think that is very much common in leadership in general today, that a lot of leaders do think they're kind of superior to what the other people have to do down there. Well, guess what? The future leader have to roll up their sleeves and they have to walk the walk. Why? Because social media makes the world so transparent that you will immediately know if he or she is doing this stuff or is just talking hooly baloney. And I think that's number one. So strong leadership, absolutely. I think though, I wish I could tell you that was the end solution to everything. But the reality is that a lot of the clients we work with and have worked with and continue to working with do not have strong leaders. And I think probably 90% of companies out there do not have strong leaders, to be frank. They have mediocre leaders, or they have leaders which are probably good for the senior management team, but they're not visible. I mean, I can give you examples of companies we're working with where the CEO has never talked to its customers. Never. In 10 years. Never. So when I say, did you talk to your customers? They will look at me like a day in the headline and say, yeah, we have done research. I said, no. Did you talk to the customer? No. We have our research department doing it. I say, would you expect the rest of the organization to talk to the customers? Yeah, of course, that's their job. I said, but that's your job too. It's the customer paying your salary. And if you have that distance, then I think in the end of the day, you will not get a home run. You will kind of trade water and kind of get there, but kind of not get there, because people will feel it in the organization. Employees will feel it at some stage. So leadership is super important. Sadly, it's just not the case that every company has strong leaders today, right?
Yeah, no, it's very true. All what you were saying about leaders are not listening to their audience. They need to establish this connection, this direct connection with all their customer, with their audiences. If they don't know their audience, how they are going to ask the employees that, hey, you need to do this or in this way or in that way, it's very confusing if you don't do that. So
Absolutely.
Now that you were talking about, well, some examples, can you share with us like your favorite case study of cultural transformation?
Oh yeah, I think I have lots of favorite stories because, as you know, we do this stuff for a living, so I do see it firsthand. I think probably one of the cases I'm most proud of is our work with Lowe's, which is a supermarket chain in the United States. We started to work with them about 7 years ago, and I remember when the owner called me in, he said, I want you to fix the brand. Well, it was kind of ironic because 3 years later, we still haven't fixed the brand, which he thought was a logo, because the brand we realized was everything. It was in particular the culture, but also the product offerings, the look, the design, everything really. So it really took us 3 years before we got around to the fact that we changed that logo, but we did change everything else. And in that process, what we did was three things. First of all, we made Lowe's realize that you cannot differentiate yourself based on a price or based on how many products you have on the shelf. You have to find another point of differentiation and you have to stand out. So what we did was we started to interview consumers in their homes. We had store managers from across the country, hundreds of them visiting real consumers and spending time with them in their homes. And they were so afraid of doing it because they'd never done it before, even though one store manager had been in a store for nearly 26 years. He was almost shaking. I remember when he was interviewing this customer in the kitchen of this respondent's home. But what happened was that they created a sense of empathy. And empathy, as you know, is the ability to put yourself in the shoes of another person and see the world from that point of view. And once they did that, they sort of realized, my God, we actually are seeing the world from the wrong point of view. And in fact, we're offering the wrong services. So out of that, we took everyone into a range of different workshops, ideated and created some really crazy concepts. And one of the key concept was to say, we're not selling products, we're selling experiences. In fact, we are an entertainment company. And that is a huge step. Think about this. If you have for 56 years as the chain, that was the age of the chain when we began working with them. If you for 56 years have basically grabbed a can of soup from the shelf and sold it every day, and that was your mission in life, and started with saying, forget about it, you are now Disney. I mean, it's like day and night. There's no common thing here. It's like people saying, what, do I have to dance in the store? And that was literally what they had to do. So we introduced the chicken dance, where the staff literally had to dance in the store every half an hour. And of course, I don't need to tell you, these are tens of thousands of employees who suddenly got into coma. So we changed the culture. And of course, a lot of people left because of it. They were furious, thought it was ridiculous. I think more than half of the organization left as a consequence of this. But today, Lowe's is the fastest growing supermarket chain in the United States, the most innovative supermarket chain in the United States. And it's in terms of its popularity as a workplace to work with, it's ranking number 2 among supermarkets in the US. And that happened over a very short period of time. And what I learned was we can easily come up with great ideas like doing a chicken dance in the supermarket or creating new products and services, but we need to have people doing it as well. And then maybe you want to do it once, but if you have to do it every half an hour for the rest of your life, you really had to change your mindset a lot. Either you will love it or else you'll leave. And that was a huge change for me. I realized, my God, if I have to create really different and powerful brands, I need to get the culture with me. And that's what we learned through this whole process. So I'm really proud about Lowe's. And I think today, when I ask people in there, members of the company, they quite often come up to me and cry. And they say, this changed me and my life and my entire family, right? Particularly during COVID-19, where Lowe's had tripled their revenue because they become the cornerstone of the local communities. They were driving it. They were in the front seat rather than 10 years ago where they were basically almost bankrupt, right?
This is a great example, and it's very interesting what you were saying, that when you were doing the change, people say, this is not for me, and I'm leaving. It's very interesting because as a brand, you want to get the people that is connected with your brand, right? That is feeling your brand. So
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Well, people are afraid of change. And I'll give you an example. I did a speech in Radio City Music Hall just before COVID-19, and so there was about 6,000 people in the audience, and I asked the audience, I said to them, how many love change? And basically everyone raised their hand. And then I said to them, how many of you have spent time in a consumer's home over the last year? And 5 people out of 6,000 people raised their hand. And that's for me very symptomatic of the situation. The consumer is changing much quicker than companies, except if you happen to be a high-tech company. Think about it. I mean, social media has fundamentally just started to get a grip around the world over the last decade, that is a fundamental change of consumer behavior. Companies are still producing the same Kellogg's box with chemicals in it. They're still producing the same city sodas with chemicals in it. They still haven't woken up to a reality where the consumer have realized a long time ago. So how can you make change happen if you don't talk to the people which are requiring the change to happen? You can't. And that in its own right is really important to have in mind. And what I think COVID-19 have done on the positive side, it required companies to change. And a lot of companies did not realize they had to change. And they are in panic mode right now. I mean, think about it. Think about the travel industry. Think about airline companies, taxi companies. Think about hotels, travel agents, theme parks. What about buffets and restaurants? All these cinemas. How much have these people changed? Well, I'll tell you, some people changed a little bit. Most of them are sitting, waiting, and hoping that this thing will get over. And I can tell you right now, it won't. So there we have people who are not seeing the writing on the wall because they're not fundamentally willing to change, right?
Yeah, no. And as you say, what is happening, this crisis is affecting every brand, and well, culture is very important at this moment. So yeah, it's hard. Well, what do you think maybe are like the most common mistakes that brands make when it comes to transforming the brand culture?
I think the number one mistake they do is that they take a team of 5 to 6 people. Sometimes they do a committee, so they take 20 people. They say, now you are responsible for transforming our company. These people sit in a room on 3rd floor with a plaque on the wall saying transformation team. Sometimes even better, they put a cool name on it with a little cartoon on it. And then they lock themselves in for 18 months and come up with this brilliant idea. They present it for everyone. The board is applauding. Everyone thinks it's fantastic. Quite often, they will compromise the ideas, but the entire organization have no idea about it because these people were not involved in it. There was no ownership. And that is the number one mistake companies do. There's no ownership transformation happening. When you transform organizations, you don't transform a building, you transform people. And you only transform people by engaging them. And you can't do that through an email.
Very important that you transform people, not buildings or not.
Yeah.
Oh, amazing. Well, in our next issue of Branders Magazine, we are going to talk about cross-cultural marketing and diversity and inclusion. Why do you think it's so important for brands to take into account sociocultural differences and have an inclusive brand message when they are creating and executing their brand strategy?
There's many reasons why. First of all, remember one thing, the concept of global brands is dead, right? Global brands once were all about having one uniform message conveyed to the entire world at the same time. You can't do that anymore. It's basically out of touch with reality. Consumers in the end of the day want to see that the brand mirrors what they stand for. The more they can recognize themselves in a brand, the more they feel a sense of belonging. I'm pretty sure that if you met your future partner and the partner of yours were reflecting exactly the emotions you have, had the same interests, same views, you would feel immediately appealed to that partner, right? But if the partner were completely different and you had nothing to talk about and all this stuff, it would be slightly different, right? And I think the reality with brands is they have to be super good at mirroring exactly what you're thinking, because then I feel a sense of belonging. Now, because social media on the good side have amplified everyone's voices, all minority groups suddenly have a very strong voice. And what happens is a minority group is always very powerful. Why? Because you stick together. because when you stick together, it's a survival mechanism. That's the reason why Jewish people have very strong voices, because they stick together. It's the reason why some other religions are very weak, because they don't have that strong sense of belonging. And it's the reason why minority groups like the LGBTQ or other minority groups are so powerful, because they stick together, they have something to fight for. And you probably remember, early on in our conversation, it comes back to religion. We all want to define an enemy. We all want to define who we are, and most importantly, who we're not. And that creates a sense of belonging and a purpose in life. And that means you're willing to fight for it and do more than just going to work from 9 to 5. So social media have really amplified everyone's voices. And suddenly when you do that, it also becomes super transparent about what companies really get it and which companies are completely disconnected from reality, and they're obviously not supporting certain issues. And then you have this peer pressure happening with these strong voices, which are creating a levine of opinions, which in the end of the day is squeezing a brand into a corner where it will tip over and die. So diversity and understanding the whole minority group type of feeling is super important right now. But it's not easy, because I just had a conversation with CMOs the other day, top CMOs in the United States. And they said to me, listen, we want to change our opinion. What's right is for us to, for example, support the whole Black Lives Matter issue. But we are an organization with 450,000 staff in our company. And if you go to one of our branch offices in Middle East, we have opinions which are going completely against this issue here in the US. So if we don't clean up our house and have our house in order, we'll be attacked left, right, and center if we go out in an ad campaign and say, hey, we really believe in that, because we actually have some pretty bad stuff in our cupboards we need to clean up first. And that is the biggest issue companies have right now, that you need to get the culture with you as well. And they haven't done that, because there's a lot of people in that organization which may not support whatever issue it is. And in reality, they should kick them out. But companies haven't done that because there's other obstacles for keeping them. So that's where the issue is so challenging for companies and brands to come up with one strong opinion where I think everyone can say, well, that's Black Lives Matter. I think it's a pretty straightforward issue, but it's not straightforward if you have a board and there's 0 Black people on the board. Right?
Yeah.
It's not. So suddenly you have to hire and fire half of the board in the meantime. And by the way, the entire senior management, 7 of these people were fired, like the case was at Nike. And then you go out with an ad and you talk about how Black Lives Matter issues is really, we support it, but they don't have a senior person with the black in senior management, right? Because they fired them all. It doesn't make sense. And that's really the issue we're dealing with right now.
And that last thing that you were talking about is something that I was thinking all this time, that I am with all these Black Lives Matters and all these diversity problems that we are watching in news, in social media. What I am seeing is that brands think that because they are now supporting this trend or this campaign, or we are doing this campaign, now my brand is a cross-cultural brand, just because they say, okay, I support this. But as you say, internally in the past, they never do it. They never did it.
No.
Now,
and you're right about what you're saying. Sorry for interrupting you, but you're right about what you're saying, because that links back to our earlier conversation, that's where you have to have your culture in order. And increasingly, employees will become ambassadors for the brand. And increasingly, you cannot control what every employee is saying, particularly not if you have 500,000 staff, or like McDonald's, more than 1 million staff. Yeah. So what do? Either you ban everyone from saying anything, which some companies are doing, which is kind of crazy to think about it, that you don't trust your employees to go out and say something about your company. And why don't you trust them? Probably because they will say something bad. And why will they say something bad? Because the culture is rotten, right? Yeah. Or alternatively, you have 1 million staff, which probably each of them have, let's say, 50 friends. Well, that's 50 million customers, right? And then you use them in an active way to drive traffic and make people spend more money. And I think that's what people have to get around this whole thing. And it's really difficult, because it requires advise you to see, as Phil Kotler was saying, the audience is also internally your audience as well as the external audience, right?
Yeah, very important this. Well, Martin, we know that you have an upcoming book, The Ministry of Common Sense.
Yeah.
It's going to be launched next year, right?
That's right, January next year.
Yeah, would you like to share a little bit about this book?
Well, the only thing I can say about the book is I'm super proud of the book. It is really fun to read, I have to say. And here's the test. I don't read it, I don't write, I don't laugh about my own stuff sometimes, I have to say. But this book I read several times, of course, after writing it, and I still laugh because it's so crazy. What's going on in this book is so crazy, and the worst thing is all true. What you will read about is how stupid companies are and how much we lack common sense in our world. We are simply just plain and stupid. And what the book is doing is to attack that in a very fun way and come up with some amazing solutions to remove the lack of common sense, or what I call nonsense. Yeah, I can't wait to see the book coming out and people reading it. It, by the way, already now has been picked as one of the top 5 books in the US. And that's even before it's published, which is kind of scary. So I wonder if they ever read that book or if they got a sneak copy before everyone else. So here we go. Let's see.
Well, it sounds interesting, and I can't wait to read it because, yeah, it sounds very, very fun and very interesting to read this new book.
Thank you.
Well, Martin, that was my last question. Thank you so much for your time, for sharing all your knowledge. I really appreciate you, that you were here with me talking. I'm very nervous yet because I know I'm talking with the great Martin Lindstrom. So thank you so much.
Louis, it's been a pleasure. And I just want to say, keep up your good work. I know you've done amazing work and you put Colombia on the map in terms of focusing on brands and create an amazing magazine. So you should be so proud of it. And I think all your readers will say the same. So keep up your good work, right? And I hope to see you one day in person, perhaps in the US or in Colombia. I don't know.
Well, Martin, thank you so much. And if you want to share with our audience where they can find you, if they want to learn more about you, about culture transformation.
Absolutely. Listen, you should go into martinlindstrom.com. It's pretty straightforward. Or you can find me on LinkedIn, which is Lindstrom Company, but just type in my name, you probably will find it on the top. And there I have a newsletter coming out every week, which is talking about this topic. And of course, you will find me on Twitter, it's Martin Lindstrom, or on Facebook, or on Instagram, on all these channels. And what I want to say is that every week I share new and interesting stuff. And by the way, if you're up for it, then perhaps down under this screen picture you guys are watching or you're listening to right now, there will be a link. And the link can guide you to a free book I'm giving to everyone right now, which is called The Biology for Coronavirus World. It's a book I wrote very quickly, which is taking neuroscience on board and looking at how consumers are changing their behavior because of all this stuff. It's an easy read and it's free of charge. So share the link with everyone and have a read and learn a little bit about what the future is going to look like after this whole mess is over, hopefully.
Thank you so much for that information. For sure, we will share it in this video. Well, Martin, thank you so much. I appreciate again your time here. And well, stay safe and have a great day.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
And to our audience, thank you so much for listening to this new episode of Talking with Branders. I hope you enjoyed this amazing interview with Martin Lindstrom. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you want to continue learning from the best branders around the world. Also, don't forget to subscribe to our magazine. Our next issue is going to be focused in cross-cultural branding, a very important topic for you and for your brand. Follow us on social media. You can find us as Branders Magazine in Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Thank you so much and see you next time. Bye.